The air was thick with the acrid smell of smoke. Jace Hunter, a soldier on the front lines of Earth's last defense against the Ardan invaders, struggled to stay conscious. His legs were numb. His body felt as if it were breaking apart from the inside. The battle had been brutal, and Earth's defenses were crumbling. He had seen comrades fall around him, each moment of battle becoming a blur of blood, fire, and desperation. Yet there was something else that Jace couldn't explain, something that stirred in the back of his mind as he lay wounded on the scorched battlefield. He had been fighting for hours, running on adrenaline, pushing forward despite the odds. The Ardan, a race of ruthless conquerors from the stars, had come to Earth with one goal: to claim the planet as their own. And now, the tide of the war seemed to favor them. The human forces were overwhelmed, and there was little hope left. As Jace lay there, barely clinging to life, he found himself unable to process the pain. His breath was shallow, his vision was fading, and everything around him seemed to blur into a dark haze. And then there was a shadow, something different from the chaos that surrounded him. It was an energy, a presence that felt unlike anything he had ever experienced. Jace's eyes fluttered open for a moment, trying to focus, but his blurred vision only caught glimpses of an immense figure moving through the destruction. The ground shook as if something powerful had arrived, and Jace felt his pulse quicken with both fear and something else, an inexplicable sense of awe. A bright light flashed overhead, blinding him for a moment. He squinted, trying to focus, but his body was unwilling to respond. His senses were dulling, and his world was slipping away. But then, the light grew dim, and what emerged from the brightness took his breath away. A woman. But not just any woman. She stood tall and radiant, her presence towering over everything around her. Her skin shimmered with an iridescent glow, reflecting the smoke and fire of the battlefield. Her long silver hair flowed like a river of light, and her eyes, deep and ancient, glowed with an unnatural intensity. Her armor was unlike anything Jace had ever seen, sleek and shining, like a second skin forged from the stars themselves. She looked like she had walked out of a dream, yet she was here, in the midst of the destruction. Jace tried to speak, but his throat was dry, his voice lost in the blood that filled his mouth. He reached out weakly, but his fingers barely moved. The woman knelt beside him, her face softening as she gazed down at him. She placed a hand on his chest, and Jace felt a strange warmth spread through him. It was as though the very air around her had the power to heal. For a moment, he felt as if the pain that had consumed him was fading, replaced by something indescribable, a sensation of peace. "You're not going to die here, human," she said softly, her voice a melodic whisper that seemed to echo in his mind. Jace tried to make sense of her words, but his vision blurred again, and the world around him began to spin. He fought to stay awake, to understand who this woman was and why she was speaking to him, as if she knew him. Who are you?" he managed to croak, his voice barely audible. The woman's lips curled into a gentle smile. "I am Zorael, a goddess of the Ardan, and you, Jace Hunter, are not destined to die today." Jace's mind raced. The Ardan. A goddess? The word echoed in his ears, but it made no sense. The Ardan were the ones who had brought war to Earth. They were the invaders, the conquerors. They had taken everything from humanity. And now, this woman, this goddess, was telling him that he was going to survive? His thoughts were a blur, a mixture of confusion and disbelief. His hand fell to his side, but before he could lose consciousness entirely, Zoral's hand glowed with a soft, golden light. She placed it over his chest, and Jace felt something inside him stir. The wound in his side, the gashes on his arms, the broken bones. All began to feel distant, as if the pain itself was evaporating into the air. His body, once so heavy and broken, now felt lighter, as though she was breathing life into him. "You must live," she whispered again, her voice low but certain. "You are needed. The war is not over yet, Jace Hunter." Jace wanted to respond, to ask her what she meant, that the world was slipping away from him once more. His eyes fluttered shut, and the last thing he heard before he passed into unconsciousness was Zor-El's soft words, "I will not let you die." When Jace awoke, he was no longer on the battlefield. The world around him was quiet, peaceful even. He lay on a soft surface, the gentle hum of technology vibrating beneath him. His body was no longer in pain, and the wounds he had suffered seemed to have disappeared. He opened his eyes slowly, taking in his surroundings. He was in a room, though not like anything he had seen before. The walls were made of smooth, polished metal, reflecting soft blue light. The air was crisp, almost unnaturally clean. Jace sat up, his movements slow but deliberate, and he realized that he was no longer wearing the torn uniform of a soldier. Instead, he was clothed in simple, comfortable fabric, his body cleaned and tended to, as if he had been cared for. Before he could gather his thoughts, the door to the room opened, and there she was. Zora-El. She stepped inside with the same graceful, ethereal presence she had carried on the battlefield. Her silver hair shimmered in the soft light, and her eyes, those glowing, ancient eyes, met his. She smiled, but this time, there was something more in her expression. Something like understanding, like she had been waiting for this moment. "You're awake," she said softly, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Jace tried to speak, but his throat felt dry. He cleared it before finally finding his voice. "Where? Where am I?" "You're safe," Zor-El replied. "For now, at least." Jace's mind was still racing. What happened? The battle, the war, the Ardan. "You're one of them, aren't you?" Zor-El nodded. "Yes. I am Ardan, but not like the others. My race, we are not all the same. There are factions within us, Jace, some of which are loyal to the cause of peace, and some who seek to rule by destruction." Jace's brow furrowed in confusion. "You're saying there's more to this war than we understand?" Zor-El stepped closer, her gaze intense. "There is, and you, Jace, are a part of that greater story. I've saved your life because you are the key to what comes next. Earth will play a crucial role in the coming days, and you are not to die here. Not yet." Jace's heart raced as he tried to process her words. "But why me?" "I'm just a soldier. I'm nothing special." Zor-El shook her head, her expression softening. "You may not see it yet, but you are special. You have something inside you that is more powerful than you realize. You are not just a soldier, Jace Hunter. You are the bridge between two worlds, and it is your strength that will help decide the future of this galaxy." Jace was overwhelmed, unable to fully grasp what she was saying. He had always been just a soldier, someone who followed orders, someone who fought to protect his home. But now, in the presence of this alien goddess, he was being told that he was the key to something much larger than himself. His life had been saved for a reason, but what that reason was, he couldn't yet understand. Zor-El leaned closer, her voice barely a whisper. "Trust in me, Jace. You will survive. The war is not over. And you, human, will be the one to change everything." Jace sat in the room, his mind racing with confusion. The events of the past few days felt like a dream, a vivid nightmare that he couldn't quite shake off. He had been saved by an alien goddess, Zora-El, who claimed he was the key to something much bigger than the war he had been fighting. And yet Jace found it hard to believe. Everything had seemed so real, and yet it was impossible to fathom. Zor-El had told him that Earth was on the brink of a cosmic shift, a shift that involved not only humanity, but also the Ardan, her own race. But why him? Why had she chosen to save him, a simple soldier, when there were so many others who had fallen in battle? The question gnawed at him, but there was no answer. The answers he knew would come later. For now, he had to focus on surviving and learning. Zoro had told him that she would teach him to use the power that lay dormant within him. She had told him that his humanity was a unique strength, something that even the Ardan had not fully understood. Jace had no idea what that meant, but he was willing to trust her. After all, she had saved his life when there seemed to be no hope left. That trust was the only thing that kept him going. Over the next few days, Zor-El guided him through exercises that were unlike anything he had ever experienced. They weren't the kind of physical drills he had been trained in as a soldier. No, these were different, more mental than physical. Zoro-Al taught him how to control his thoughts, how to focus his energy, and how to tap into a part of himself he never knew existed. The first lesson took place in a vast training room within the ship, a sleek, silver structure that seemed to hum with life. The walls around them shimmered, shifting in color as Zor-El stood across from him. "Close your eyes," she instructed, her voice calm and steady. Jace did as she said, his heart racing with uncertainty. He had been trained to fight, to survive, but this was something entirely different. "Focus on your breathing," she continued. "Let everything else fade away. The battle, the war, the fear. Focus only on yourself. Focus on what lies within." Jace took a deep breath, trying to clear his mind. The thoughts rushed in anyway. The faces of his fallen comrades, the smoke and fire of the battlefield, the overwhelming sense of hopelessness. "You're thinking too much," Zor-El said gently. "Let go of those thoughts. Let them slip away like sand through your fingers. You cannot control what has happened, but you can control how you react to it. Breathe. Focus.
Become one with the moment." Jace inhaled again, more deeply this time, and let the tension in his body melt away.
Slowly, his racing thoughts began to quiet. The memories, the fear, the doubts, they faded into the background. For the first time since the war began, he felt a sense of peace. "Good," Zor-El said, her voice still soft. "Now, feel the energy inside you. It's there, Jace. You've always had it. It's a part of you, waiting to be awakened." Jace frowned slightly. "Energy?" "I don't." "You do," she interrupted, her tone firm but not unkind. "All humans do."
It's your connection to the universe, to everything around you. The Ardan have learned to harness it in different ways, but your kind is different.
You are more attuned to it. And it is this attunement that will allow you to survive what is coming. Jace swallowed, trying to understand. "So, what do I do with it?" Zor-El smiled, and for the first time Jace saw something softer in her expression, a flicker of warmth behind the intensity of her gaze. "We begin the next step. You have to learn to harness it, to shape it. Focus your mind, and let the energy flow through you." The room around them shimmered, and Jace felt a sudden warmth in his chest. It wasn't physical, but something deeper. A presence. A pulse. It felt like an extension of his very being, like he could feel the heartbeat of the universe itself. "Now," Zor-El said, her voice steady and guiding, "try to push that energy outwards. Imagine it leaving your body, moving through the air, touching everything around you. It's there, just waiting to be used. You have the power to control it, to shape it to your will." Jace clenched his fists, his body tensing as he focused all his energy on the sensation in his chest. For a moment, nothing happened. The room remained still, silent. His breathing quickened, and he began to feel the familiar frustration bubbling up. But then, something shifted. It was like a spark igniting in the darkness. The energy inside him surged, rushing outward like a wave. The room around him seemed to pulse with life, the air thick with the force he had unleashed. "Good," Zora whispered. "You're beginning to understand." Jace opened his eyes, his heart racing. The room looked the same, but he felt different. more powerful, more aware. He looked at Zor-El, unsure of what to say. "That's it?" he asked, his voice shaky. "That's all it takes?" Zor-El nodded.
No, that was only the first step.
"What you just felt is the beginning. The more you practice, the stronger you'll become. But remember, Jace, power without control is dangerous. You must learn to control the energy, or it will control you." Jace nodded slowly, the weight of her words sinking in. This was only the start. The war was still ongoing, and everything was far from over. But in this quiet moment, in the stillness of the room, Jace felt a sense of hope that he had not felt in a long time. And it was because of Zor-El. She had saved him, and now she was teaching him. The connection between them, however strange it seemed, was growing stronger. There was something about Zor-El that Jace couldn't deny. A power in her presence, an aura of strength that went beyond physicality. She wasn't just a goddess in name. She was a force of nature, and in some way, Jace had become part of that force.
As the days passed, Jace's lessons with Zor-El continued.
He grew stronger, more in tune with the power she had awakened within him. But there was still so much he didn't understand. He still didn't know why he had been chosen, why Zor-El had spared him when so many others had died. He didn't understand his role in this war, or why his humanity seemed to matter so much. But Zor-El was patient. She didn't rush him, didn't demand answers. She simply guided him, letting him find his own way. And slowly, Jace began to trust her. Not just as a mentor, but as a friend. One evening, after another long day of training, Zor-El and Jace sat together in the quiet of the ship. The stars outside the windows twinkled in the distance, and Jace felt a strange sense of peace, as though the universe itself was watching over them.
"Why me?"
Jace asked quietly, his voice breaking the silence. "Why did you save me?" Zor-El turned to him, her gaze thoughtful.
"Because, Jace Hunter, you are the one who will change everything. You and the humans like you possess a strength that the Ardan do not understand."
"It is not your technology, nor your weapons, nor your war tactics that will win this battle. It is your heart, it is your resilience. That is the power that will change the course of the war." Jace stared at her, the weight of her words settling heavily in his chest. "But how?
How do I use that power?"
"You will learn," Zor-El said softly, a smile touching her lips. "Together, we will make sure of it."
"You are not just a soldier anymore, Jace."
"You are part of something much greater." For the first time, Jace allowed himself to believe it, that something greater was within reach, and he would not face it alone. The days blended into weeks as Jace's training continued under Zor-El's watchful guidance. What began as uncertainty had slowly evolved into something far more intense. Each lesson, each encounter with the goddess, pushed him further into a world he didn't understand, a world that seemed both alien and yet, in some ways, deeply familiar. He had learned to harness the energy inside him, that power that Zor-El had told him was unique to humans. But it wasn't just about controlling it. It was about understanding it, learning to bend it to his will. The feeling was unlike anything Jace had ever experienced, as if the universe itself was his to command, waiting for his touch. He had never believed in things like destiny or fate, but now, with every passing day, he began to wonder if there was some greater force at work, pulling him toward something bigger than himself. Zor-El had said that he was a part of something much larger. She had said that humanity's strength, their resilience, would decide the outcome of this war. It was a lot to take in, and Jace still couldn't wrap his head around it. But he trusted her. In a world where so much seemed uncertain, Zor-El was the one constant. She had saved him. She had taught him. She had given him hope. But even as Jace trained harder, his thoughts were often consumed by questions. Questions about the war, about the Ardan, and about the mysterious connection he shared with Zora. She had never explained much about herself, and though Jace had asked many times, she always deflected. He had tried to press her for more details about her race, the Ardan, and their true intentions, but each time, Zoral would change the subject, offering cryptic answers that only deepened the mystery. One evening, as they stood together in the quiet of the ship's observation deck, gazing out at the stars, Jace couldn't hold back any longer. The weight of his unanswered questions was becoming unbearable. "Zora," Jace began, his voice unsteady, "why won't you tell me the truth about the Ardan? I know you're not like them, but who are you really?"
What do you want from me? From humanity?
Zorel's gaze remained fixed on the stars, her face unreadable. For a long moment, the only sound was the soft hum of the ship as it drifted through space. Jace waited, his heart pounding in his chest. He needed answers. At last, Zora spoke, her voice soft but laced with something Jace couldn't quite place. "The truth is complicated, Jace," she said, her tone distant. "The Ardan were once a race of peacekeepers, travelers of the stars, seeking harmony among the worlds. But something changed, something dark within our ranks. A faction of our people, led by those who sought power, began to crave domination. And they twisted everything we once stood for. The Ardan who invaded Earth were not the Ardan I was born into. They were something else, something I never agreed with." Jace was silent for a long time, processing her words.
But you didn't stop them. You didn't stop the invasion.
Zora's eyes darkened and she turned to face him, her expression filled with something that almost resembled pain. "I tried to stop them in my own way, but the truth is, I was too late. I was betrayed." Jace felt a shiver run down his spine. Betrayed? By who? Zoral's gaze hardened, and for a brief moment, Jace saw something in her eyes. A flash of anger, of regret. "By those I thought I could trust," she said. "I was once part of a faction that sought peace, but I was cast out when I refused to comply with their demands. They wanted to use Earth, to harness its resources, to control it. And when I defied them, they turned against me." Jace took a step closer, his mind reeling. "So, you're not with them anymore? You're not part of the Ardan who want to destroy Earth?" Zoral shook her head slowly, her silver hair catching the dim light. "No, Jace, I am not like them. I may be Ardan, but I am not one of them. I've been fighting against my own people for years. I've tried to warn Earth, tried to stop the war before it could spread, but I've been silenced." "They made sure of it." Jace's heart raced. He was struggling to understand. "But if you've been fighting them, why didn't you tell me sooner? Why keep all this from me?" Zora's expression softened, her voice tinged with sadness. "Because I wasn't sure if I could trust you." "I had to be certain. Trust is a fragile thing, Jace. I didn't know if you would see me as an ally or an enemy. And if I told you too soon, it might have destroyed everything." Jace ran a hand through his hair, trying to process everything she had said. Betrayal, a dark faction of the Ardan. Zorel was a rebel, a fighter for peace in a galaxy torn apart by power-hungry leaders. She wasn't an invader. She was a freedom fighter, just like him. "I get it," Jace said, his voice steady. "You were just trying to protect me." "But you've got to understand something. You saved my life."
You're the reason I'm still here. I don't care what your people have done. Oh.
You're different. You've shown me what it means to fight for something bigger than just survival. Zorael's eyes softened, and for a brief moment, Jace saw a glimpse of something he hadn't noticed before. Vulnerability. It was a fleeting expression, but it was there, and it made him feel closer to her than ever. "Thank you," Zora whispered. "You don't know what that means to me." But even as the bond between them deepened, Jace knew there was still so much to learn, so much more to uncover. And soon, he would learn the most shocking truth of all, the truth about his own role in this war. Days later, as Jace was training in the ship's combat room, a sudden alarm echoed through the ship. The lights flickered as an emergency alert blared over the intercom. "Warning," the voice announced.
Ardan fleet approaching. Prepare for impact.
Jace's heart raced. He had been expecting something like this, but he hadn't imagined it would come so soon. The time had come. The war was no longer a distant threat. It was here. Zor-El appeared at his side in an instant, her face hardening as she glanced at the alert. "They've found us," she said quietly. "The Ardan. They know where we are." Jace's blood ran cold. "How? How could they know?" "Betrayal, there are those within my faction. Those who still want to see Earth fall. They've tipped off the enemy. It's a trap." Jace's fists clenched. "What do we do?" Zor-El met his gaze, her expression grim. "We fight." In that moment, Jace understood. This was no longer just a war for Earth's survival. It was a war for Zor-El's survival, too. And as the Ardan fleet closed in on them, Jace realized something even more chilling, that the stakes were much higher than he could have ever imagined. The fate of the galaxy itself hung in the balance, and he, a mere human soldier, had become part of a battle that could reshape everything. He wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. He was fighting for the truth, for loyalty, and for something greater than himself. And this time, there would be no turning back. The ship rocked violently as the warning signals blared again, cutting through the tense silence that had settled in the control room. Jace gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles white as the familiar sounds of battle filled the air. The Ardan fleet was closing in, and everything had led to this moment. There was no turning back now. Zor-El stood beside him, her face a mask of determination. "We don't have much time," she said, her voice steady despite the urgency in the air. "The fleet will be here within the hour. We have to act quickly." Jace nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. He could feel the power inside him. Everything he had learned from Zor-El, everything she had taught him about harnessing his strength, now felt like it was ready to burst. But there was still so much doubt, so many questions that remained unanswered. What would happen when they faced the Ardan? Was he truly ready for this? "We'll fight," Jace said, his voice low but resolute. "Together." Zor-El glanced at him, a flicker of something like pride in her eyes. "Yes, together." As the minutes ticked by, the crew members aboard the ship scrambled to prepare for the coming conflict. Jace was taken to a command center where he could strategize with Zor-El and the other rebels who had gathered. There were dozens of faces in the room. Humans, some of them soldiers like him. Others civilians who had somehow become a part of the resistance. They all shared a common goal: to stop the Ardan, to preserve Earth's freedom. The tension was thick, almost suffocating. But in the midst of the chaos, Jace felt something stir within him, something that went beyond fear. He had come to understand Zor-El's mission. It wasn't just about defeating the Ardan. It was about restoring balance, stopping the war before it consumed everything. Zor-El had chosen him for this battle, and in that moment, Jace knew that there was no turning back. He had to fight. Not just for Earth, but for the future of the galaxy itself. Zor-El stood at the front of the room, her presence commanding the attention of everyone. She spoke with the authority of someone who had seen the horrors of war firsthand, someone who knew what it took to survive. Her words were calm, but every syllable carried weight.
"We are outnumbered," she said, her voice cutting through the room. "But we have something they don't."
"We have humanity. The Ardan fleet will underestimate us, but we will strike when they least expect it. We fight not just for survival, but for the future of this galaxy," Jace felt a surge of pride. He was no longer just a soldier following orders. He was part of something much bigger, something that could change everything. He wasn't just fighting to survive anymore. He was fighting for the truth, for freedom, and for the people he had come to care about. Zor-El turned to him, her gaze intense. "Jace," she said quietly, "I need you to lead this attack. You know the Ardan tactics better than anyone. You'll be our eyes in this battle. You'll guide us." Lead the attack? He had never thought of himself as a leader, but in that moment, something inside him clicked. He wasn't alone. Zor-El believed in him, and that belief gave him the strength he needed. "I'll do it," he said, his voice steady. The room fell silent for a moment, and then Zor-El nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. "I knew I could count on you." With that, the strategy session began in earnest. Jace and Zor-El worked alongside the resistance leaders, formulating a plan to counter the Ardan assault. It wasn't going to be easy. There were too many unknowns, too many risks. But they didn't have the luxury of waiting. The Ardan were coming, and they had to act now. As the hours passed, Jace found himself at the helm of the ship's fighter squadron. The rebels had managed to gather a fleet of makeshift ships, many of them old and battered, but capable of delivering a powerful blow if used correctly. Jace had spent hours in the simulator, preparing for this moment, but nothing could truly prepare him for what was coming. Zor-El's voice came through his earpiece, calm and reassuring. "Remember, Jace, this is not just about fighting, it's about strategy. Think before you act. We need to be smart." Jace's grip tightened on the controls. He had never been one to hesitate in battle, but this time was different. This wasn't just a fight for survival. It was a fight to change the course of history. The battle began as the first wave of Ardan ships appeared on the radar. The sleek, menacing vessels cut through space like a swarm of insects, each one brimming with firepower. Jace's heart pounded in his chest as the call to arms rang out across the ship. "All units, prepare for engagement," came the command from the bridge. "This is it, everyone." Time to take a stand. Jace's fighters shot into the air, joining the rest of the fleet as they sped toward the enemy. The stars blurred past him as his ship accelerated, his pulse matching the rhythm of the battle. The Ardan ships fired first, their blasters lighting up the darkness of space as they sought to strike down the rebels. Jace weaved in and out of the enemy fire, his hands steady as he maneuvered the ship with precision. He had been in battles before, but this was different. The stakes were higher. The enemy was stronger. But there was something else. Something within him. Something he had never felt before. It was the power Zor-El had awakened within him. A power that surged through his veins, guiding his every move. He fired back, his shots hitting their mark with deadly accuracy. The Ardan ships began to falter, their formations breaking apart as the rebels pressed their advantage. The battle was fierce, but there was a sense of unity among the resistance, a bond that was stronger than any weapon. Through the chaos, Jace's thoughts kept returning to Zor-El. She was still on the ship, coordinating the battle, keeping the fleet organized. He couldn't afford to fail her, not after everything she had done for him. He saw her then, her ship gliding through space with grace, cutting through the battlefield with the ease of a predator. Zor-El was a force to be reckoned with, and she was leading them all toward victory. But then, something unexpected happened. A massive Ardan battleship appeared on the radar, much larger than any Jace had ever seen. It was heavily armored, bristling with weapons, and it seemed to move with a deliberate slowness that only served to make it more intimidating. "Jace." Zor-El's voice crackled in his earpiece. "That's the flagship. It's armed with a powerful energy cannon. We need to take it down before it destroys us all." The flagship was the heart of the Ardan fleet. If they could destroy it, they could cripple the enemy's forces. But the ship was nearly invulnerable to their attacks. They would need something powerful, something unexpected. "Got it," Jace said, determination hardening his voice. "I'll take care of it." With a deep breath, he dove toward the massive battleship, his ship hurtling through the dark void of space like a comet. The Ardan flagship turned its massive cannons toward him, preparing to fire. Jace's hands flew over the controls, pushing his ship to the limit as he dodged the incoming blasts. He needed to get closer. He needed to...
The shot came out of nowhere.
The energy cannon fired, and for a brief moment Jace thought it was over. But then, something inside him snapped. The energy within him flared to life, and with a desperate surge of power, he redirected his ship's trajectory, narrowly avoiding the blast. He didn't have time to think. He just acted. With a roar, Jace's ship slammed into the side of the Ardan flagship. A perfect hit. The explosion that followed lit up the sky, blinding him for a moment. When the light faded, Jace saw that the flagship had been severely damaged, its energy cannon disabled. It was crippled, but the battle wasn't over yet. The remaining Ardan ships began to retreat, their formations breaking apart as they fled from the battlefield. The rebels had won. Jace exhaled, his body trembling with the aftermath of the battle. It had been close, too close, but they had done it. They had fought back the Ardan, and for the first time, Jace felt a true sense of victory. As the dust of battle settled, Jace looked to the sky, where Zoral's ship hovered nearby. She was watching him, her expression unreadable. But then, as if sensing his gaze, she smiled. It was a small smile, but it spoke volumes. They had done it. They had won. And the war wasn't over yet, but with the strength they had found in each other, Jace knew that they had a chance to change everything.